toil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Well, right now it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking Time for Hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leitch. You are listening to Time for Hemp at timeforhemp.com, Tumblr, SoundCloud, and, of course, iHeartRadio. A big shout-out to KDK Distributors for giving us a grant to keep us loud, proud, and strong. And a big thank you to all of you for sharing us with all your friends. It is Wednesday, and on Wednesday, we put a spotlight on the amazing group LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. And we are against prohibition, and we think you should be too. And in fact, we are a growing team of people, get it? A growing team of people who are dedicated to ending prohibition, and we are broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with information and music that you can share with everyone around you. On Wednesdays, we have as my joint host a member of LEAP. And don't forget, anytime you hear the word joint on the big broadcast, nearly 2.5 million people all around the world pack their pikes, their bongs, their vaporizers, and take Time for Hemp. And my joint host today, Lenny Frieling, and I are having a joint conversation with one of our joint friends from LEAP. We're going to be talking to Brian Gaughan. And it is a very interesting conversation. I encourage you to pack your bowl tight and sit down and make it right with all your friends and take Time for Hemp. Let me pass this joint conversation over to my joint friend so we can get on with this joint chat. Judge?
Casper, as always, a pleasure. Today, I'm smoking. I'm coming straight off an exciting legal victory in my day job that really helped someone's life. And I'm happy to say from the free state of Colorado, he was not there because of drugs. That's a wonderful thing. And I'm glad that I have help on the show today. It's a good thing. I understand that it's you and me and a LEAP buddy. Well, I think since I'm supposed to be doing the interviewing, I should start the conversation. Today, we have with us Brian Gaughan. And so you can find him. It's Gaughen. Brian Gaughan has a substantial law enforcement background. Not only, Brian, let's have you tell it. Would you please share with our listeners your law enforcement background?
Sure can. It's a pleasure to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
A little bit of a background on LEAP. As we explained, it is Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and that is a group comprised of current and former members of law enforcement from the entire gamut, from federal prosecutors down to little town one-member police departments. We have members. We have prosecutors, federal agents, sheriffs, state police, all across the gamut. They're either retired or still active. Well, unfortunately, too many of the active guys want to stay quiet until they retire, and then they'll start talking about the insane war on drugs and how actually the war on drugs is more dangerous than drugs ever are. But my background is, for 11 years, I was a police officer, and part of that time, I was an undercover narcotics officer where I would buy drugs. And actually, I'll tell you the point where I decided that the war on drugs was completely unwinnable and actually, in my mind, morally wrong. I was working undercover. I was buying cocaine from an individual who still lived at home with his mother. He was early 20s. And I went to his house, actually, to make another purchase from him. He wasn't home, but his mother was. And his mother told me she was glad to have a conversation with me. And she was glad to talk to me one-on-one. And what she wanted to tell me was she was very glad that I had become her son's new friend, that since his father had passed away some 18 months ago, he had fell in with the wrong crowd. And she was glad to see he was starting to hang around with good people. And I would be a positive influence on his life. And little did that woman know that I was there really to buy some more cocaine and record a purchase and further on down the road, arrest him and probably lock him in a cage for 7 to 10 years for selling me cocaine.
Brian,
anyway, that was my moment.
Forgive me for interrupting. You are raising so many questions, so many things I want to ask you. But before we get too far beyond where we are, let's look at two of them one at a time. You said, if I heard you correctly, the war on drugs. And is it really a war on drugs or on people?
No, you're right. It really is. It's a war on people, and it's even a lopsided war on people. It's mainly a war on brown and black skinned people.
Now, okay, in all fairness, softball question there, just to make what I repeat and think is the most important point, and obviously you repeat it and think it's an important point. But here's the question I really have. You said the war on drugs is more dangerous than the drugs. Did I hear that right?
Absolutely. That's absolutely my opinion, and many, many members in the law enforcement field agree with me on that.
Tell me about that. Why is that so? Please.
Even from a police officer standpoint, from a pure law enforcement standpoint, so many police officers are killed in this country regarding drugs, doing ridiculous no-knock raids at 3 a.m., battering down people's front doors and throwing flashbangs, grenades through a window. A lot of times policemen get shot doing that. They get hurt doing that. They get injured doing that. Police officers are also victims of this insane war on drugs. They get shot, they get killed doing undercover drug buys. It's a dangerous, dangerous business for everybody involved. And obviously, I don't even need to go into the number of people, of human beings in this country that are killed by police during those raids. It's bad for both sides.
So you're telling us that these drug raids, cops die, civilians die, and people that the cops correctly thought were involved with drugs die.
Right. Unfortunately, many times people who weren't involved in drugs die because they're raiding the wrong house, or a snitch gave wrong advice and wrong information. And so even completely innocent people die in this so-called war.
Let me jump to undercover for a moment. And I hadn't thought about this really before, but in my experience, to set up an undercover deal, overall, the plan would involve more than one sale to the same purchaser to build up an amount that they would buy. Did that ever happen, or was it only building up the purchase from the street dealer?
No, there's a lot of tricks to it. And how you first, start that purchase is usually you find somebody at a traffic stop that has a small amount of cannabis or some substance that the government deemed illegal. And then you just hold that over that person's head. Hey, you're looking to go to jail for a year. You know what? Who'd you get this from? Introduce me. And you work your way up. So you're always just gathering more and more people into this tangled web, and that's how you do it. But like another trick, at least in Illinois, the penalty is greatly increased if the sale is done within 1,500 feet of a school, a park, or a church. So another trick was, I'll meet in a restaurant parking lot that happens to be 750 feet away from a school. Well, now I have like a bigger felony with more potential jail time hanging over that man's head or that woman's head. So, there's ways that you game the system. It's sad, but that's one of the tricks. Where you're going to make that purchase from.
I think these days marijuana is considered by many to be sort of the easy question, where people either know that it's harmless or helpful, or people that just don't care anymore because, for better or worse, they realize it's just not a huge deal on many levels. How do you take the leap from there to not only does that need to be legalized and regulated, so does heroin? So does morphine. So does, you name the illicit substance, methamphetamine, also need to be legalized and regulated. How do we make that leap?
I make it by just comparing it to, we can go back to, Prohibition, Al Capone's era. We should have learned our lesson then. Prohibition doesn't work, and it didn't work, and it will never work. If people want a substance, they will get that substance. So making it illegal doesn't help. It doesn't help anybody. It actually exacerbates the situation. It makes it worse. But with just going back for a minute to the alcohol prohibition, people went from drinking beer to drinking whiskey to drinking hard liquor because it was easier and safer and more convenient to manufacture whiskey or bring in bootleg whiskey because it's smaller amounts. Beer, you need giant kegs, you need warehouses. Same here. People actually shy away from marijuana because of drug testing because it's in their system for 30-plus days. But they could snort a line of coke and call in for a drug test the day after tomorrow, and they're clean. So our whole, quote-unquote, war on drugs, it really leads to more and more problems. Right now, the people who control and regulate, let's use heroin as the example, the people who control and regulate the heroin trade in this country are drug cartels and street gangs. Those are the people who run that business. If we made that legal, and when I say we, I mean the government, so I shouldn't really say we. If it was controlled and regulated by the government, much like alcohol and tobacco are, we wouldn't have the street gang violence that we have now. But a good analogy is, everybody's heard of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in Chicago. Everybody knows about Al Capone and the Bugs Moran and St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And, it was a big shock to the nation. Oh, my God, 14 people were shot in Chicago because of prohibition on alcohol. Why our country didn't wake up on last 4th of July in Chicago, 88 people were shot over the July 4th weekend. 88 people were shot in Chicago. Not killed, but shot over a 3-day weekend. And the vast majority of those shootings were gang-related. And gangs are all about controlling a drug place. So how just, 14 people getting shot on St. Valentine's Massacre back in 1929 woke up the nation's eyes to the failure of prohibition. But the July 4th massacre in Chicago, where 88 people were shot at, of course, different locations, but that's all over the drug trade. And people still don't get it. They want to throw good money after bad. If we controlled those markets and regulated those markets, we wouldn't have the street violence that we do have now. We don't see, Budweiser distributorships driving over to the Coors distributor and shooting people in the parking lot or starting a building on fire or breaking heads with baseball bats over who's controlling the beer trade in the neighborhood. Just like we don't see Marlboro starting a fight with Pool. It just doesn't happen because it's controlled and it's regulated. And until we control and regulate it, we're going to continue to have violence.
You brought out a very interesting thought about Al Capone. I just rewatched what is arguably not a very good movie, but really amuses me, the new version of The Untouchables. And the point of the movie is Al Capone was convicted and went to prison and died of syphilis. What is not mentioned is, but the gang won. Somebody filled his seat. Somebody took his place. The gang won. And that tilt, although I love gangster movies more than the next guy, it's also important to keep track of the perspective of these things. Let me ask you this. In your work undercover, you were involved in drug purchases, drug sales, and the like. Did you at any one single time, anywhere, hear a drug seller ask a potential purchaser to show proof of age?
No, not at all.
Never checked?
No, never did. It never came from a source. It was like in a sealed container that I knew had quality control and production control, and I knew that it was contaminant free, and I knew the strength level. None of those things occur when drugs are bought and sold illegally. None of them exist.
Now, where that brings us, after 11 years as a police officer, I believe Chicago, you went on to be a firefighter and paramedic for 23 years. May I assume that drugs were still part of the picture of your daily task, challenge, life?
They certainly were. Yes, you are correct. After 11 years of police work, I became very disenfranchised and very disappointed in what I thought when I entered it was an honorable, good career. And the war on drugs really is what really kind of turned me off as far as police work. So, yes, I did testing. One of the fire department, became a paramedic, and spent 23 years as a firefighter paramedic. And I have to say, in responding to hundreds and hundreds of drug overdose calls, both illicit and legal, I'm proud to say never once did I go to a marijuana drug overdose in 23 years. All the drug overdoses I went to, none of them ever had to deal with marijuana. But as far as being a paramedic, one thing I can say, because there are states out there still that are fighting a battle to arm first responders with Narcan, which is a narcotic antagonist, and it really is one of the miracle drugs that paramedics can carry and really should be readily available at any drugstore in this country, as far as I'm concerned. They should be just sold over the counter.
Now, let's just make sure our listeners are up to speed. As paramedic, as firefighter, you would run into heroin overdoses, correct?
Very regularly, yes.
Oh, okay. And of course, you've never seen on the street ever heroin being bought or sold with a known purity level, right?
Nope. And that's why people overdose on it.
Okay. I wanted to set the background, and would you please continue with Narcan and how that fits into this picture?
It to me I classify it as a wonder drug. Because I literally have seen people who are getting CPR done on them because they're not breathing and their heart's not beating, and they literally are at death's doorstep, and they might even have 3/4 of their body into the door.
Specifically
from the hospital, from a heroin overdose. Heroin overdose. And we will, before we get to the hospital in the ambulance, that individual's talking to us like, he's pretty much fine. We're going to walk and talk. And it's because of a drug called Narcan, which is a narcotic antagonist. So what it does basically, once we put that in a person, it is a sponge. It absorbs all of the narcotic that's in their body, and whoop, it's gone. It's short acting. It lasts for like 15, 20 minutes. And in 15, 20 minutes, boom, they're back under the influence, and you give another shot until the narcotics are out of their body. But what it does, it is like an unbelievable lifesaver that I've seen work many, many, many times. And
how quickly does it need to be administered after an overdose to do its thing?
Boy, the quicker the better. But I can tell you, I literally specifically remember a call where a mother was doing CPR on her son on his bedroom floor at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. He was a kid. He was like a high school kid. They heard him fall, and mom and dad went there to hear what the noise was, and their son's unconscious on the floor, pulseless and non-breathing. They're doing CPR. They call an ambulance. We show up. We give him Narcan. 5 minutes later, he's asking us, "What's going on? What's going on?" Like, you don't know what's going on, dude. It works that fast. You give it to people, and it works. But to me, the sad part is there are so many law enforcement organizations in this country that are balking at having police officers carry Narcan either in their squad cars or on their person.
Now,
if I was going through that struggle.
To give that a happy spin, it's also true, and tell me if I'm wrong, but isn't it also true that for the first time over a number of years, we are seeing first responders with Narcan in the ambulance, with Narcan, in the ambulance, with Narcan on board the fire truck? And although there are areas that don't have that, the trend that we're seeing is in the right direction. Is that what you've seen?
Absolutely. In fact, there's been a papers here in Chicago just in the past week. I believe it was DuPage County police officer saved someone's life with Narcan. It's a wonder drug. And when police officers, I still have many friends that are police officers, and they love to debate these topics with me. When they tell me that they shouldn't be carrying Narcan because they're not paramedics, I then just follow it up by saying, okay, don't you annually get certified in CPR? Well, yes, we do. Oh, okay. Don't you have an automatic defibrillator for heart attack victims in the trunk of your squad car? Well, yeah, we do. But okay, then did the police unions were there a lot of flack from police officers from learning CPR, from carrying an automatic defibrillator? No, they weren't. So why is there flack from carrying Narcan? I don't understand it. Well, I really do. It comes down to funding, but
I am wondering how many babies have been delivered by law enforcement officers and firefighters. I'll bet you it's more than 2.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, with that said, we're going to be taking a commercial break. This is one of 2. And we're going to pay our bills, and then we're going to listen to a song about how fantastic marijuana is, and then we're going to come back and take a whole lot more time for hemp. You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
THCF Medical Clinics are the premier physicians clinic in the United States. THCF has offices all across the United States from Hawaii to Michigan. THCF Medical Clinics has helped approximately 150,000 patients obtain their medical marijuana permits to legally possess, grow, and use medical marijuana. If you have chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, or any other neurological degenerative disease, or if you have any gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, or if you have AIDS, cancer, spastic disorders, seizure disorders, or glaucoma, call us at 1-800-723-0188 or visit us online at hemp.org. Again, the number is 1-800-723-0188 and the site is hemp.org.
Everything will be just fine. little wine. Everything will be just fine. Take life by the hand. Time is short, let's live for a laugh. Imagine what we can be. Releasing fear from our reality. That's why I'm telling you to smoke a little pot, drink a little wine. Everything will be just fine. Smoke a little pot, drink a little wine. Everything will be just fine. Take life by the hand. Time is short, let's live for a laugh. Imagine what we can be. Releasing fear from our reality. That's why I'm telling you to smoke a little pot, drink a little wine. Everything will be just fine. Smoke a little pot, drink a little wine. Everything will be just fine if you smoke a little pot, drink a little wine. Everything will be just fine.
That's the way the law is written.
That
I had a
Pop-
client.
That was Smoke a Little Pot by Hannah's Groove, and you are listening to Time for Hemp at the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting highlight at timeforhemp.com. It is a highlight because when you show up here, it's light music and we're always high. Ha, ha, ha. It is Wednesday, Leap Day, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. We put a spotlight on that fantastic group. And we have a great joint conversation going on today with my joint host, Lenny Frieling, and one of our joint friends here on the Big Joint broadcast, Mr. Brian Gaughan. I'm going to hush my mouth and get back to my joint and let them get on with their joint conversation here at Time for Hemp.
Brian, Casper, good to be back as always. Brian, I know an issue near and dear to both of our hearts is the relationship between the community and law enforcement officers, ambulance people, paramedics, firefighters, how they get along with each other. And I'm saying the obvious, but I do that. It's easier than saying complicated things. It's obvious that if those groups work together with a good attitude, cooperatively, our lives in general work better. Having said that, do you see, with all your years, and we're talking 34 years on the streets basically, did you see anything where drugs and the illegality of drugs had an impact and what that looked like on this police-community relationship?
That's a great point to bring up. Unfortunately, the war on drugs has so divided communities that I don't know how many generations it will take to repair. Police are so involved in putting their foot on the drug trade that many times boundaries are overstepped, rules are broken. The Constitution isn't followed. It's such an oppressive boot on so many communities that those people who are in those communities, well, they are aware of a real criminal, not someone who is using or buying or selling or possessing drugs, but a real criminal, an armed robber, a rapist, a burglar, just an all-out bad person. They're not going to go to the police and say, you know what, the guy who's doing all the burglars in the neighborhood, it's that guy right there. Because they don't trust the police. They're afraid to talk to the police. Because now the police are going to think, well, you know what? When I was in your house, I smelled marijuana. You know what? I think in a week I'm going to come back here and I'm going to have a warrant. And at 3 a.m. I'm going to throw a flashbang through a window and we're going to kick your door down. People have become afraid of the police. Instead of the police being really community servants, which really oriented the profession, I really did have that warped idea in my head that I was there to like do good for people and do good for the community.
Let me ask you this real quickly.
Sure.
Let me ask you this, and I apologize for interrupting. Let me ask you this. I'm sitting here near my front door. If the door were to get kicked in and people were to come in an armed home invasion with machine guns, is it going to be gangsters or is it going to be a SWAT team? Who's doing these armed invasions more? What'd you see?
Oh, absolutely, unequivocally, without a doubt, the number of SWAT raids done in this country on a daily basis far outnumber home invasions done by criminals.
And those SWAT invasions... Go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, so many of them, the vast majority of those SWAT raids are done over drug issues. And many times, it literally is, we have an informant that told us this person has 2 plants or 3 plants, or they have 6 seedlings in their basement. This is what like drug raids are done for. If there's a rapist or a burglar or somebody who commits a real crime, what in my mind I envision as a real crime, the police don't do a 3 a.m. drug raid and boot in a door and throw flashbang grenades and have a SWAT team and terrorize everybody in the house.
Where do they get... As they say in a movie, where do they get those toys? Referring to Batman. Where does he get those toys? Where do they get these machine guns?
Yeah. From you and I, the United States taxpayer, these are federal government supplies all of these munitions to local law enforcement, county law enforcement, state law enforcement, and of course federal law enforcement. But I mean, it's actually searchable. There's searchable databases online that show where you could punch in what your police department is, and you can see what they have gotten from the federal government under a program that allows law enforcement agencies to obtain merchandise, for lack of a better word, from the federal government, specifically the Department of Defense. That's why little towns have mine-resistant tanks and many automatic weapons and flashbang grenades. It all comes from the federal government. It's military-grade equipment being used against a civilian population, oftentimes for the mere crime, quote-unquote, of growing a plant.
Is there a connection you're aware of between a department being able to obtain this military hardware and the drug war?
Well, I know, like, pretty much on a weekly basis, you can find stories out there of a police department using flashbang grenades, MRAP vehicles, doors kicked in, military assault-type weapons on people that have no drugs in their house, none. In this case, fairly recently, out of, sorry, I can't think what state it was, but same thing, a 2 a.m. flashbang through the window, it landed in a crib and severely disfigured an infant in a crib. It was looking for somebody who was involved in a drug trade, and no, there was... So the person wasn't there, no drugs. It's just every day there are stories of raids going wrong. Every day. Yeah, on behalf of police too. Look, I don't want this to come across as like an anti-police rant, because having been a policeman and related to many police officers that are still cops and many friends that are cops, this rant really is against the tactics that police are using. It's not anti-police, because policemen are hurt and killed in these activities way too often also. So this isn't an anti-police thing. This is pro-police in some aspects.
Well, the police officers in general are not asked what law do you need? Their bosses maybe, but the people on the street, nobody goes to them and says, well, do you need marijuana to be made legal and drugs to be turned over like liquor so that you can fight rapists? Those people I don't think are being asked. Let me ask you this. 34 years of watching the use of increasingly lethal, more military-type flashbangs and armored vehicles and machine guns, seeing a battle that you personally have watched for 34 years. Are we winning? Are the police winning this battle?
Not at all.
And as Richard Nixon said, how about 4 more years?
Right. It just continue. We just continue to want to throw more money after a battle that is not winnable. You would think at least if you were making headway in the war on drugs, supply would go down because of law enforcement. Well, no, supply's actually gone up. You would think prices would increase because it's harder to get. No, prices have continued their downward spiral. You would think purity levels would decrease because, when we have limited quantity, we need to cut it with something else. No, purity levels continue to increase. There's no level at all that shows anywhere since 1971 when we declared the insane war on drugs that we have won not even a battle, let alone the war. We haven't won a single battle. The prices up, prices down, purity levels up, availability is up. It used to be when you would read in the papers about drug seizures, it was in pounds. It was, police seized 4 pounds of heroin. Now it's in like tons. It's in the hundreds and hundreds of pounds. Police seized 800 pounds of heroin. Well, I'm not making any headway at all. Just look at the seizure levels that you see. They're huge. And the reason for the drastic climb, the continuous decline in heroin overdose deaths, that's all due to the purity level. Those deaths are due to, not the drug, in my opinion, it's due to the war on drugs. Our war on drugs, not working, and increasing purity. If people were able to go to a drugstore, if people were able to go to a government clinic and get heroin, much like Portugal as an example, and get heroin where they know the purity, they can inject, they can use clean needles, we would solve so many of society's problems. Drug usage, drug overdose, we could fix these problems.
You didn't see this morning's paper in Portugal where personal drugs, I understand to be legal, not just marijuana, but hard drugs. I read in this morning's paper that Portugal fell off Europe and is now drifting across the Atlantic Ocean as a result of the change in drug policy. And had you read that, that might have some impact on your thinking there.
Yes, and I also read this morning on the paper that in Colorado, apparently the sky fell.
Well, it did, and I've been working this show now by flashlight, and the good news is that with LEDs, not only might they be very good for home grows, they make for wonderful flashlights. So, yes, we haven't had public service power now since January. It's a problem. Everyone needs to be drug tested, and they fail it because of the inactive metabolite of THC, which fails them on the urine test. So now, whether it's and I don't want to name specific types of employment, but they can't get any good employees as easily because they had to fire all the stoners. So we've got a serious problem there that we need to deal with. I thought for a while, I was thinking this morning that, oh man, here I go. I'm going to be preaching to the choir. And then I thought, what a ridiculous expression. I am theoretically, and dumb enough to believe it, a rabbi and a preacher. And if you don't preach to the choir, who else is there to preach to? If I'm preaching, whoever I'm talking to is the choir. And if they're not believers, then hopefully they're listening to me preach and they'll become believers. And speaking of choirs and preachers and morality, it strikes me that working undercover it poses two moral dilemmas. One, am I right in thinking that it literally seeks brother on brother, brother on sister, father on son, with who they roll and how they roll them, friend on friend?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, much more so friend on friend. It's, everybody's out to save their own skin. Everybody's out to save their own skin, and whoever they can toss to the wolves and hopefully run away themselves, many people are happy to do it. And unfortunately, like, to me, that's sad. It's sad that that's what police have so much become in this country. An organization that it brings divides amongst people, amongst friends, amongst family. We should work to solve crimes and put real criminals behind bars. Not break up families and put someone behind a cage because they grew a plant or had a packet of powder in their pocket. To me, police really should stick to doing police work and not try to weigh in on a medical issue, because to me, drug use it's a medical issue. It's not a law enforcement issue at all. We need to get rid of these draconian laws and going to like medical marijuana. Like, we drive people to break up families, like literally to move from the state of Minnesota, say, to Colorado or to Oregon because of drug laws. Like, that's what our drug laws do. We break up families and we make people make decisions. Should I quit my job and risk losing the house here in Indiana so we can move to Colorado? Or, honey, you take our daughter and you go to Colorado or go to Oregon. I'll stay here and try to maintain the household. This is what our police departments are doing in this country. It's wrong. Policemen should stay out of medical issues. Just like doctors aren't pulling people over for speeding, policemen shouldn't be getting involved in medical issues. You know what? They're two separate, distinct areas. There's a medical issue, there's law enforcement issues. Don't combine them and try to use them to make money for police departments and police agencies.
What that really brings to mind is, although the police are not doctors and the doctors are not police, it seems to me that just as the Ten Commandments, likely, if to the extent that it's reality and to the extent that it's just good advice, I suspect the Ten Commandments are not just intended to apply to Jews. I also suspect that the Hippocratic Oath, at least in the part that says, do no harm, that seems to cross the border nicely. And I think do no harm is a good starting point, maybe for all of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That actually should be part of the oath of a police officer, too. Do no harm.
I love that. What brought you to Leap? It is quite a jump. I don't see a big jump in... Let me jump backwards. The morality of working undercover. To work undercover, you were by definition required to be a sworn law enforcement officer lying. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely.
And what was that about? I mean, make that real for me.
That's actually one of the reasons why I just couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't be dishonest to anybody. Not someone who was breaking some law that somebody came up with. Or anybody. I just can't be dishonest with people. I have to be honest with others, and just as well as I have to be honest with myself. And I just couldn't reconcile that. Like, I couldn't be a liar, for lack of a better word. I couldn't deal with it. It didn't make sense to me from a moral standpoint. When I chose that profession, that I thought was all about morality and being right and doing the right thing and helping people, and I thought, these people, building these cases and taking people to jail and having them charged with crimes didn't help anybody. It only hurt people. And I didn't see a positive side to it at all. Not at all.
Well, as you know, we say in Leap, and I say it repeatedly, you can cure an addiction. You can't cure a conviction. We've been talking...
And I love that phrase.
I do. It's really good. it says something. It matters.
It
We've been
sure
We've been talking about what I think is the most important part of this equation so far, which the people, the individuals, the humans on the LEO law enforcement officer side as well as the civilian side. We haven't looked at all at property issues. Are there any property issues that get thrown into this mix? Does the government take stuff?
Well, absolutely. That's I really personally believe that's why so many law enforcement agencies, I don't mean individual law enforcement officers, I think they're really just a cog in the wheel and just kind of do what they're told, but so many law enforcement agencies and the bodies that control the law enforcement agencies, by that I mean the county that controls the county police, the county sheriff, they push their police departments to make traffic stops, to bring dogs that are trained to trigger on command, not on wheelie odor, to do searches of vehicles, either legal or illegal, because once they find a substance in that vehicle, they can seize it. They can seize buildings, they can seize homes, they can seize warehouses, automobiles, bank accounts. I just read just this week in the state of Colorado, I read in the newspaper, in the state of Colorado, an out-of-state couple, and forgive me, I don't remember what state they were from, but they were not from Colorado. An out-of-state couple visiting in Colorado was pulled over in the state of Colorado where cannabis is legal, and they had a legal amount of cannabis in their automobile after their vehicle was searched after a traffic stop. But also in the vehicle, the police found $20-some thousand in cash. The police seized that cash and said it was evidence of a crime, which that blows my mind.
You know, it fascinates me. Either they had $20,000 to go buy pot, and frankly, the pot's not that expensive out here. The prices are below or similar to what they were when there was no legal pot. But if they came out here with $20,000 to buy pot, then why would they already have pot in the car? And if they already sold you can't have both. Either you have the money to buy the pot or you have all the pot and you have no money left.
Right. Yeah, unfortunately, those seizures are so bad because now all across the country, what those people, that couple has to do now is they have to file a lawsuit against the police agency that seized their cash, and actually have a courtroom battle over who rightfully is entitled to that cash. Which I mean, they can have spending $10,000, they can have spending the whole $20,000. I'm trying to get their $20,000 cash back. It's legal highway robbery is what it is, and it occurs every day, day in, day out, in all 50 states and in Washington, D.C. It's just there's police departments out there that literally are funded 80% of their funding comes from asset forfeitures. There are police departments that 80% of their funding, I mean, think about that. That's 80% of what's funding this police agency are asset forfeitures, things they steal, in my mind, they steal from Americans to fund their police department. And it's issues like that $20,000 out of that couple's car. So people have a big fight on their hands, an expensive fight, to get their own money back.
Do you recall a phrase that goes something like "no taxation without representation"?
Right.
That kind of rings a bell there. I know
Sure
that
does.
For many, many, many years, and I believe still currently, what happens in Colorado in a seizure case, the local police, the county sheriff will carry on the criminal prosecution. The forfeiture action will be handled federally, and then 50%, I believe, of whatever the feds end up with goes back to the locals. My understanding has always been that it was because the federal law was easier on the law enforcement side to obtain the seizure, to keep the stuff, than it was under the more protective Colorado state law. So the feds took the money and then gave the kickback on the seizure to the state, and the kind of because it is so easy for them to prove why they should keep it, they find one joint in the car and $20,000, and they claim car's transporting illegal drugs, so we keep the $20,000. And then the lawyers frequently end up bargaining with an assistant U.S. attorney. How about if you give us 10% back? How about if you give us 20% back? Or here's the receipt for the motorcycle he just sold for $35,000 cash. We get a lot of it back. But the point is, I couldn't agree more. It's robbery. It's just robbery. Now, if somebody, it's not all that cut and dry, and you don't want to paint it as black and white, and I don't want to paint it as black and white, but it occurs to me that it is frequently the black and whites that are pushing this ahead.
It sure is. It sure is. It's become, and what this asset forfeiture does, how it affects everybody, not even those who have assets taken from them, it puts the focus of police work onto drug crimes where they have a strong potential of gaining a reward from asset forfeiture. It strips them away from investigating real crimes, because there is no asset forfeiture when you arrest a robber, when you arrest a burglar, when you arrest a sexual assault suspect. There is no asset forfeiture for real crimes. For murder, there's no asset forfeiture. That's why murder rates, unsolved murder rates, continue to climb. Violent crime rates continue to climb that are unsolved. Even though violent crime rates are coming down, the solved rate is going down also, because police are focusing their efforts on drug crimes where they reap a financial reward. And that financial reward really, in my opinion, should be taken away from police departments, so they focus on real crimes, not drug crimes.
It seems to me, last week I heard an officer referring to murder clearance rates going from 80+% down to as low as 35% because of this diversion of effort and time and money.
Yes, actually, and those are statistics that are compiled by the FBI. I think last time I saw one for 2013. And it's like drastically, they have literally dropped like almost 30%. The solve rate for homicides in this country has dropped almost 30% from the 1970 level. And just that in itself makes my head spin. But then when you add to that the advances that we now have as police officers, with DNA, ballistic testing, audio surveillance, tracking records, cell phone tracking records. I mean, we have so many more tools in our toolbox to solve crimes. But murder rates, solve levels, have declined almost 30% since 1970. Well, what happened in 1971? Richard Nixon declared the war on drugs. What's the big focus on? The war on drugs, because that's where the money is. You don't get money when you arrest a burglar, a rapist, a murderer, an armed robber. It costs money. It costs police departments money to investigate those things and arrest those people. But drugs, oh, well, that's the cash cow. We have asset forfeiture. We're taking cars, we're taking buildings, we're taking bank accounts, we're taking cash on hand. We make money in these, and that's what they focus on, unfortunately.
It occurs to me that Richard Nixon, who gave us the phrase war on drugs, also gave us a phrase that perhaps the irony of is now quite useful. You and I know, we all know, prohibition will never work. It hasn't worked since 1918, 1937, or 1970. Prohibition doesn't work. So I think we should steal from President Nixon once again, except we should add a question mark. 4 more years? Do we win the war on drugs in 4 more years? How about 40 more years? How about 400? It will never happen. And if something will never happen, one of the definitions of insanity is repeating a behavior that doesn't work. If it doesn't work the first time, it doesn't work the second time. When you try it a third time and it doesn't work, you really shouldn't be very surprised. By the time you get to the time period between 1918 and 2015, and there's still, correct me if I'm wrong, whatever drugs people want available on the street without a huge amount of brain damage, at least in locating them, I would say we're not winning that war. And I would say, How about 4 more years? And I don't think anyone can look me in the eye and say, oh, yeah, just we're that close, man. We're that close. 4 more years. Just give us a chance. Give us another tank. And we like those hovercrafts, so you need to give us some gyrocopters. And I understand you're experimenting with some really cool satellite stuff. So we need access, of course, to all your satellite stuff. And 4 more years, done deal. There won't be another drug on the streets, and we can worry about feeding people. And real, it's just 4 more years.
Well, it is that time. We are at the end of the hour, and it would be good if we had a chance to give a shout-out to our favorite URLs. Our guest first.
Brian, is there anyone you would like to give a shout-out to?
Oh, geez. Well, since I'm in Chicago, my kids are in Portland, and part of the show has a connection to Portland. I'll give a shout-out to my kids in Portland. Hey, Aaron, Kelly, Kevin. And a shout-out to my 2 kids here in Chicago. Hey, Brian. Hey, Patrick.
Well, I'm going to give a shout-out today, in addition to my constant shout-out to Leap and SSDP and Normal and the rest. I'm going to give out a shout-out to my wife, Debbie Dodge, who for just shy of 30 years has yet to kill me. And I think that's worthy of a shout-out.
And I want to remind people that we are a growing group of hardworking activists who are dedicated to ending prohibition all around the world. And we would encourage you to share us with your friends. And, of course, as always, remember, the next time you hear me, you'll know that it's time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spend. Take another look and spend some time for him. Don't cut trees for paper, 'cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes, it's time for hemp. Whoa, an acre of hemp makes 20 bales of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no...
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. The only broadcasting network dedicated to ending the global war on drugs on iHeartRadio.